Welcome, everybody. Thank you for already being here in what I see as relatively high numbers for our little stream here. My name is Konsti. I work at Handy Games, and I'm here today with the teams from Massive Mini Team and Mirage Game Studios, and we're going to talk about the console release of Little Big Workshop. Yeah, why don't you guys introduce yourselves real quick?
Sure, we can begin. I'm Simon at Mirage Game Studios. I'm the lead designer and one of the founders.
And I'm Toby, and I'm lead designer, lead artist at Mirage Game Studios.
Hey, my name is Florian. I worked as the technical lead on the port of the game, and
I am Lucas. I was working on the UI programming mostly,
which is one of the most important parts, at least from my understanding, when we're talking about console ports, right? Especially a game like Little Big Workshop, where know it's obviously designed to be played with a mouse and keyboard in mind. But I think you guys did a pretty good job at making it very, very accessible to console players. So how do you go about this? Like, what's the first things that you have to keep in mind when designing a UI and coming up with that sort of control scheme for a game that does not support it yet?
First, we really played this game a lot. And then we took a look around on what other games on this genre released maybe on PC or exist on PC and on consoles. We played a couple of this tycoon and management games and checked how did they transfer through the menus and what are the input schemes on the controller, and then first made very basic designs of how to adapt this to Little Big Workshop.
Yes, and I mean we not only played the game, but we had to pick it apart, right? So we looked at every window, every UI element, and made a list of every functionality in the game. And in the end, we noticed that we here and there missed something which we had to integrate later, but in the end, this worked out fine. But that was the first step, and then our second step was to just bring the game onto console, so that we knew what we were dealing with. So we just basically brought the game as it is to console at first, with like a cursor interaction, so you could just play the game with the controller, with the cursor, and from then we brought in we started to work over the UI in the windows, and step by step iterating through everything, and that's where we started.
And I don't know much about coding, so maybe this is a stupid question, but I'm assuming that you don't only have to change the UI, right? There's, you have to make the game actually run on a different platform, on a different operating system, right?
These are basically like the two parts we had. Just adapting the game to the new systems, which are sort of different for Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. Especially the Switch is a bit more challenging because obviously the hardware requirement is a bit tighter. And the second part was designing the UI for the console and making it work with the controller. But the UI as it is in the game is obviously also coupled to a lot of gameplay elements, and so we needed to, basically study everything that's there, like the whole code base, and see what is the easiest way to reuse everything that's there, every code, and implement our own UI basically on top of that. Yeah, and that's also how we started. So we always had the PC UI as it is, and we thought about if we could use it for the console version, but in the end, would have been way too complicated to just change it around. So we had to start making our own UI, and then but we always had the old UI as a separate thing, so we could, orientate.
And when we started, we just saw, okay, we can divide all those menus we have in there on the PC version. We could separate them to one is are the whole production menus, and the others are all the strategic menus where you could manage your workers, read the statistics and stuff like that. And the others is where you really buy your machines and remodel your factory. And then we implemented this radial menu. And in the beginning, we just had so white blank windows that would just open there to have a feeling for the radial menus. Then we just grabbed the PC UI, dragged it into our new windows, made it accessible with the controller, and then figured out how should this menu really feel now. And and then it gradually developed to where it is now.
Yes. Yeah. And especially the main UI, which you just see on the PC version, where you can click a lot of buttons and open a lot of windows and context. We needed to transfer to a different system because we wanted to have like a quick flow through the game, right?
Yeah.
So, and we thought, like as we said, we played some other games, and the most used approach was the radio menu. So we tried this, and this worked pretty well for Little Bit Workshop as well. But there were so many different windows that we had to split it up into radio menus, basically. So and then we thought, okay, that's cool. We can make some categories and divide it to like a left and a right side, and that worked out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I feel like it works really well. Like the radial menu, as far as I know, has been a staple, like an industry standard for console gaming, across all different genres of games. Like you have it in action adventures, shooters even, selecting weapons or something. And it really works obviously it really works in a simulation strategy game as well. Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe you guys from Mirage, we've talked about this before we went live. You weren't exactly pro console port in the beginning of in the beginning of the development of Little Big Workshop on your end even. So before it even came out on PC, we talked about this. What did you think were the biggest challenges? Why would you think it wouldn't work on console? And why do you think it ended up working anyway?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is probably because Massive haven't done a really good job with the porting. But to go for the first question, we never really designed this to be a console to begin with, a console game. From the ground up, we always said, okay, this is lead platform is going to be PC. This is where the main audience for strategy games is. I mean, it could work technically on consoles, but we weren't really going for it at all. And by the time this discussion came up again about should we make it for consoles, we felt like we are too far into to start remaking all the things to make them more console suited, so to speak. So yeah, we just weren't set up for it at all. It seems like a way too big challenge to do it as late as we were talking about it. So yeah, it was both technical and as you've been talking about, a lot with the UI and how you actually control things, because everything was made for mouse and keyboard, and you can click anything, you can hover anything. There's lots of information everywhere, and I mean, information flow and so on is really, really challenging on consoles and with that kind of UI. Beyond just all how it actually looks and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, the effort you have put into rebuild the UI, it's a massive undertaking. There's so much information and so many menus that has to be condensed in this new way to interact with the game. Since the game is a mouse and keyboard game, we really went all out with like menus and you click on things and you have to redesign the entire flow of information and how you interact, and that's super impressive.
we had early on, we were throughout this whole process, we've been more like a support team, just advising now and then and replying to questions from the guys over at Massive Mini Team. So they've been more or less single-handedly doing this. But I remember early on in a couple of meetings when we were talking about, I mean, how they could redo the UI and some. What do you think about these solutions? I remember seeing like our own UIs but more streamlined. It was a weird thing where someone comes back and says, "So we remade your thing and it's better now." Yeah, okay. He's got a point about this one. Right? Why do you have so many tabs in this one? That's kind of redundant.
Maybe you could trim the fat in
I mean,
areas.
on PC, it doesn't really matter because you have so much space to work with and so on. But yeah, it was a really fun experience to see that stuff. And yeah, I mean, if I could throw in a question, I mean, the UI in general has been a big challenge, and we really think it's cool the stuff you did. But I was really curious how you went about when it came to the planning mode, because that's really a beast in itself, I think. Because the main UI is, you've seen that in other games where you have this 3D cursor thing going on where it's connected to the camera and you fly around with it at the same time. But the planning mode is really a PC thing for me. It's like a software thing where you drag things back and forth. And now it's going to work on consoles. So I'm just curious how did you go about doing that one, and how did you how did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that was a very interesting part because we didn't know ourselves. Like, for every other part, we could come up with a solution, but for the planning mode, we weren't really sure how much we need to change it and how we want to change it to make it suitable for consoles. So we were just starting to implement like a basic version, right? So we're saying, okay, how could we approach this? We could just try to have like a mapping to the D-pad and like move between nodes and that's where we started basically, just to have something to work with, so we could iterate onto having like an iterative process. And
then we found out that sometimes a thing has 4 branches. Then it was
yeah, right. Like in the beginning, we thought, okay, we can just map this to the D-pad, and then we figured out, like after we talked with you guys, that there are actually more possibilities, and so. But we wanted to change it overall visually to make it more clear where you're actually navigating towards, and I realized pretty quickly that the solution we started out with was working pretty nice. So. And at that point, we were like, okay, why? So this works nice and this is fast. Why not just go with that? I mean, that was actually just, I guess, lucky or whatever. The first thing we tried was just working out.
It's a step-by-step thing. So I mean, I don't think it's luck. It's just you try something and then you reiterate and you do it. And
yeah, exactly.
Even if we mess things up by throwing in 4 branches here and there, it's the same idea of navigating in like a grid seemed to work out. So
yeah, but it was surprising. That's what I said. We wanted to try to change it that you have more like a grid structure, so they actually know where you're navigating and stuff. But right now, I think it feels very intuitive, and usually when you want to go somewhere, it works, and we're quite happy with that.
Did you have to make any changes to gameplay, like how you build the products and such, to make this work, or did you just?
No, I mean, actually, the underlying structure was pretty nice already. I mean, we could reuse a lot of functionality in code, disable some stuff for the PC version, which were not needed because you had like completely free camera movement, and we had to make some cuts, obviously, right? Because at some point we were like, oh, let's just try out to use the blueprint mode, and then we were seeing that you could like drag the nodes around and like rearrange everything, and then we were like, oh no, like we can't do that. Let's not do this. This is crazy. Like I thought we don't really need it, so we had to make a compromise, I guess, at some points. And yeah.
I mean, for what it's worth, I've seen really few people actually drag things around anyway, but some people do when
Yeah,
they restructure things because it's nice.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because that shows like you guys are super aware of how the main pillars of the game, and that makes you able to trim things that may not be as core or
Yeah.
adds that much to the core experience.
So that was also like part of the process, right? Just figuring out what is there and what is actually needed. There might be some functionality which would have been nice, but in the end, it was all a matter of just quickly navigating the menu and being able to produce new products. And I think that's what we ended up with. We had to implement some sort of comfort functions, right? So that when you say like, okay, I want to assign a certain workstation, that you just jump to a workstation and then you can like trigger around with the shoulder buttons. So you like switching between available workstations. So just to make it quicker and more
There are
fluid.
some checks that you would first go to a billboard, and if you have no billboard, then go to the workbench. And
Right. And when we were cutting something out, we could always ask you just like, how important is this, right?
I did feel like there were several mails of, do you mind if we kill this?
Yeah.
Would you be upset if we cut this feature?
Yeah.
It's like, if you have to, but I mean, keep it as close as possible.
Don't say Christian, it's his baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember some of these discussions where obviously also everybody had a different opinion, right? Everybody's like, oh, this isn't that important, you know. Simon says, oh, no, it is actually very important. That's just how it is, yeah. But I think it turned out really great, yeah.
I mean, one of the things were definitely the hover functionality, right? Because it was explaining so much. You could just hover about something and you got like a little tooltip and you would understand the game just by hovering, and you would understand what a certain icon or element stands for. And that was a challenge as well. In the beginning, we thought we couldn't provide like a solution which was good enough to explain the game. But after it was basically we just tried to since we just were navigating the UI anyway, and we were basically hovering over UI elements, we just tried to bring in the tooltips as they were again after a certain certain amount of time, and that was also working out quite nice. And it was actually like a very small amount of work to make this improvement, but it helped a huge amount.
I feel like half the text we've written are tooltips, to be honest, because there's so much small little guides and info on those, which explains what the just says deploy. Okay, deploy what, and when you hover it, it says a bit more about what you're doing.
We couldn't do this for everything, obviously. But we thought, hey, we could do we have the tutorial and we have the help menu, so people can look everything up anyway. So.
That also gets to the core of the game because there are so many layers of things that you could have used for, but perhaps they aren't the most important things, like about tutorial, but maybe more like pro or late game stuff that you don't really need right now. So you have to figure out and prioritize your tooltips and condense them to what you.
I mean, not only tools, like in general, all the information in the game, and especially because working or playing on the console means you're usually on a TV, you're sitting far away, or you're playing on a Switch, which is really small. So we had to make sure it's very readable. Everything you need to know is available like immediately to your eye. And so, yeah, but that was mainly our artist who were doing an amazing job to like polish everything up.
Oh yeah, I'd like to extend like a hats off to the UI design he did as well, like the small little like decorations and such, that little tape thing on the post-it, and he really nailed the style. We haven't really like as you can tell, the UI is inspired by like physical stuff. So it's a clipboard but with the thing, but very stylistically to make it modern and don't feel too like old timey. And I think he really made that design, made it look great, really true to the ethos. And I can't remember that we ever spoke about it. He just nailed it.
I mean, in general, we just let you guys loose. So we didn't have that much material for you because we had a couple of good meetings in the beginning, and then you just set off, which was nice for us. But we were sort of on standby, and can they do this? How's this gonna work out? But
I mean, we thought the same, right? We were like, oh, do they like this? Will they like this?
It looks so cool. Like little paper stacks and such. Looks great.
Yeah.
So cool.
Thanks.
No, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
no one
I
ever
think-
specifically said anything about it. Seems like you guys got the gist of what we were going for, and some of the between the lines things, so to speak, when it comes to the themes and so on. They were there in the UI and so on. So it's
yeah, we are very grateful for our UI designer.
Mm.
He really did a good job, and yeah, he really tried to just use what is already there in the game and try to like improve a little bit on it, I guess, here and there.
For sure, for sure. Another thing that just came to my mind that I could imagine would be difficult when porting a game is how do you tackle save games on consoles? They work differently, don't they? Was that a big problem?
Well, not necessarily, but like I mean, especially with consoles, you're more restricted in terms of hardware. I mean, you have the old HDD storages, and they're pretty slow, and so you have to make sure. And in general, like even like a very low-end PC today is quite at least as capable as like a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox. Um, so we need to, so we just need to make sure that the save game system is actually fast enough for consoles. You know, I remember that in the beginning, we had for big levels we had quite a lot of loading times because the consoles couldn't keep up. So we needed to improve on this one. And yeah, this is just a lot of technical detail, I guess.
Yeah, I can't remember if you put a little cap on some things, but I remember this was discussion early on when we said you guys asked us for sample scenes. Like this is a small factory, this is a crazy factory. So we grabbed
that was insane. Yeah.
one of the record breakers on the Discord. We just grabbed one of his factories and sent it to you, and I got the feeling I started a fire somewhere when I did that. But you know, it's
I mean, for us, that was the best thing to have these scenes. We were, as I said, we were starting off with just like the console version, where we could play with the controller as a mouse, basically, and that gave us a chance to also test the performance on consoles, right? And we could use these levels to see where is the limit, where do we need to step in and optimize to achieve a better performance, basically, or to have a fluid performance on consoles. And yeah, that was the second most challenging part, I would say, after the UI, is to make sure it runs smoothly on this limited hardware, basically. Yeah, there went a lot of time, and because one of the things we were trying is obviously not to change the gameplay, right? The game was great as it is, so we wanted to bring the whole experience to console and still improve on the performance. And that was quite challenging, actually.
Did you add it to any optimization to the graphics and the 3D and such?
I mean, for the graphics as well, the GPUs are generally a little bit stronger on consoles than CPU performance. We needed to tweak a lot of the post-processing effects to make it faster, because that's especially very expensive if you have like a lot of different effects going on and you need to process through the whole image. And that's especially costly on consoles like Switch, because basically what's going to happen is that the GPU needs to talk with the CPU and like exchange data, and that's very slow. And so we try to basically minimize these accesses to between the GPU and the CPU, which also meant that we had to rework the post processing, but try to obviously stick to what it was before. So,
yeah, the game. That's one of the first things that came to mind when I looked at the stream. Was like the game has. It's obviously the same game, but it has like its own look. It's a bit more saturated and it's a bit more cartoony, even if that's possible. So that I think you nailed to make it. It still looks nice, but it looks like its own thing, kind of.
Yeah, thank you.
Regarding the 3D models, we did a lot of optimization previously, but since we had so much to work with late in the project, we kind of went all in and just did these really expensive assets. And I was thinking that maybe it was something that you
Yeah,
had
I mean, actually, I felt like most of the assets were fine. Like we obviously checked, for like texture, memory and stuff, because this is also very limited on consoles, especially on Switch. You have like 4 GB, which I think a modern PC today, you have probably at least like 8 GB of RAM. And so we looked through everything. We looked through the meshes and models, but the polygones and texture sizes and stuff, that was usually fine. We had to change compression a little bit here and there, but was mostly minor optimizations. Nothing big. And yeah, I would have. I don't know what we have done if there would be. I think a level of detail for this kind of game, for example, is kind of hard to achieve because you usually see the whole game anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So we went in with making everything super optimized and having low poly counts, and just because, like I said, the perspective is so high up. But then a lot of players they enjoy going really close. So that meant that we had to improve on the animations and make everything a bit more detailed, and that kind of snowballed. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When
that's
we look at it, we can see it's the same meshes and models that we made. So it's nice to keep the same vibe and tone for sure. I
it's
mean,
incredible.
as the nerds we can see the small differences, but in general, it's if you grab the screenshot and look at them quickly, it's the same game. It's cool. It's not like a obvious downgrade or anything. So it looks cool to me. So yes.
Great. Did you think that?
yeah, definitely looks really good. Were there any major differences in the different consoles? Like, how do you have to approach the project for each different platform? PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. Do you start with one and then work towards the other, or do you go all in at the same time? How does that work?
I mean, we already have some porting experience, so we have already sort of like a base for where we can start off. Like everything we need for console, like saving, achievement systems, and so on. We already have something where we can start, which brings us in the position to really quickly bring the game to Xbox and PlayStation and Switch. But then we really need to look at every console and try to optimize for that console. I mean, furthermore, like the Switch already has, the Switch is more limited in the hardware, and also we have the smaller screen size. So when it comes to UI design, we have to make sure we also design for the sort of screen. But other than that, it's basically just making sure that the different capabilities of the console, like for example, on Xbox, it can be really hard because you can freely switch users and have multiple applications running. It's not possible on PlayStation. So then we got to make sure the game is reacting appropriately to the situation where a user loads a game and then he's like, I really want to change my user now and have like a save game while I'm loading the save game, and that can create really crazy behaviors. So we got to make sure that this works. And
That's not an issue in PC for sure. So that's
yeah.
thing to have in mind. Yeah.
Regarding this Switch version, have you implemented support for the touchscreen?
No, actually not. We thought about it. Yeah, we thought about it, but it's not yet there. Yeah,
that would be like another level of UI redesign. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that would be crazy. Honestly, though, I don't even know if it would really benefit the game. I guess there's some instances where it could be cool, but it's not.
Could be yeah, but the general view might be more confusing than. I mean, you have. But it could be cool, but it's definitely a lot of work as well.
Yeah, and then also you have to adjust it depending on whether you're holding the Switch or you're actually having it docked and using the controller, because then obviously you don't have the touch screen at all. So
I think that's why a lot of games omits the touch. Just because it's meant to be a seamless experience.
Yes.
And changing the control scheme midway could be messy.
Yeah, it's a whole new challenge for sure as well. Yeah.
And our main goal was to make it really fluid to play on controller, right? So,
Right.
and then we have really nice controller controls, and then I guess that's already sort of enough for Switch, because I feel like touch doesn't really add another layer of I don't know.
Yeah, it would have been a funny gimmick, I guess, but not really that useful all in all.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because the main goal was to make it fast with the controller, to make it fluid and fast with the controller.
Yeah.
Are there specific items regarding the game, like say performance, that has been the biggest challenges in making these ports? Say like AI or the building mode or the planning mode. Do you have anything that's been specifically challenging?
Yeah, I mean, we had a whole lot of things. I guess AI was a part of it, especially we didn't only look at the performance itself, which was also a big problem, but also like at performance peaks, basically. So moments in the game where in a very quick amount of time, a lot of performance were needed, and we needed to track this out. And then the AI was was a part of it, especially when it got initialized. We had some frame issues. So for example, like the truck was driving and like the guy was loading out stuff, like coming out of the truck. Then you had like a peak, and on a console you could really feel it. So we had to optimize that and make the initialized process for the AI needed to be spreaded basically over a bigger perimeter of time, which brought new challenges, obviously, because it broke the game here and there. And yes, and then I mean, really, it comes down to that there's just so much going on in the game at the same time. So we had to prioritize where we want to optimize and just find out what are the parts of the game which were eating up most of our time. And then I think it came down to like machines processing things, updating 2D like UI positions on the screen. What else?
The generating of the nodes in the planning mode were something when you have really when you want to craft a product with lots of nodes, like for example the robot or something, then you have branches, lots of branches, and when you open in the beginning it was like, oh, I have to wait for 5 seconds. Then we started.
I can almost see the fear in his eye when it says the robots. It's like this has been this has been a nightmare thing.
Yeah,
there's a lot of parts in the robots. Yeah.
Is it like because of the screenshots they had to produce for all the parts, or?
No, they're looking for options, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just the options that needs to be generated. Yeah.
There's so many permutations of how you can make one robot, because this piece could have these 3 pieces or these other 3 pieces.
Yeah, right.
Just out for like 4 levels.
We made some
complicated, right? You have these requirements and attributes, and they also have to check if it matches and works, and yeah. So
we when developing the game, we built these tools, like for example the product tools that would just spit out all the permutations of a product, so we could get like an overview, and that kind of broke with the robot as well.
You can see parts going for the horizon, like
lines after lines of potential permutations. We're like, damn.
Yeah, it was quite challenging. Also, I think there were like it wasn't always sure that it would find like optimal solutions. I guess it could happen that there's like no fitting node or whatever, and then we had to make sure that this was working as well on consoles and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not sure. We had a list. I don't have the list with me now where we optimized a little bit. Well, mainly we had to touch like a lot of parts of the game. Fortunately, the eye was just a small part. For example, we also had to try a lot of different things, especially for the eye. You had like these, you were using behavior trees, which were processed through the game to determine what the AI is doing next, and there were also a lot of nodes which need to process. So at some point, we were thinking to just remove this and write some just some code to replace the behavior tree, basically. Not everything, but just small parts which are eating up most of the performance or whatever. So something like that.
Like a brain surgery on little guys.
Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah, diving into a brain that someone else designed can be a challenge, I guess.
Yeah.
Please optimize this AI that you didn't build. But yeah, it seems to be working out all right.
I mean, touching the AI was really the last resort because it influences the gameplay so much, right? And we don't want to introduce new problems and issues into the game. And
We play too much with it around.
yeah, if we change too much, then the game is just not the same anymore, or we get some late
don't pick up the bongo.
Yeah, or they don't pick up items anymore. You're like, oh no, right? Yeah, and also something since it's like a sandbox game, we need to do a lot of QA and just testing. So we made sure that everything just is still properly working, right? So
it is a delicate thing to poke into as well when it comes to game design, because the AI affects how you play quite a lot. So if they start taking a lot more time on them to do to do things, then okay, all the deadlines are gonna break, and then we have to adjust those things. And yeah, we were worried you guys would feel a bit more like going into game design to maybe use that as a method to streamline or change things, but it seems like you hardly touched that stuff at all, because it seems to be working anyway. Because that was one of my worries, that you would try to like speed up the game or have lesser products or something, because then you'd have to redesign all the values everywhere.
yeah, I mean, we loved the game as it was. So we played it in the beginning, and we loved it just to play the game. It was super nice, and we all love management games here, and it was a great experience. And so we don't want to change the experience, because what makes the game basically, right? Also, the AI behavior is. I think we had an exchange about AI, and one of the points you made is that they kind of, or you want them to be sort of believable, and we try to keep cut to that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's some sluggishness built into them even, and here and
Yes,
there.
right.
Yeah.
They could like fall over sometimes, right? With an item and drop the item, and then that was really.
They would be a bit too robotic if we just left them to be efficient AIs. We
Yeah,
want
very boring.
quirky little guys running around doing funny things.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, right? That makes the game. That makes that's why the game is amazing, right?
There's something ironic about the way we made them seem stupid is actually more performance heavy. But yeah.
My favorite accident that they can have is when they carry something, then they slip and toss it through the wall outside the factory. I'm like, that's not exactly realistic necessarily, but it's a great analogy to life in general, I feel like.
we had this reported as a bug way back.
Yeah.
I think it was years ago. We saw it the first time when we first implemented the drop thing. And we just said, no, that's too much fun to patch out. We could add like a section, never throw it outside, but I want them to.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had a few angry community people think that's just stupid, but we went for humor here because it just makes sense.
It fits the theme of the game as well. It's such a humorous game.
It also makes people more doors to not just have one entryway, so they need a separate exit so they can fetch the few things that sort of escape the limits.
And well, there is no ceiling, so it kind of makes sense.
True, that's true. Yeah, true. Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it like that, but it's just so funny when they carry it to this machine and they almost made it, and then they slip and off it goes out into the yard, and then they have to go all the way around to pick it back up.
As well,
yeah. Well, that is entirely random. Some of those moments can really make the experience. Like he was just there. He was almost got there, and you feel like that was designed by his artistic behavior.
It's funny, yeah. And then to imagine that there's very likely some player out there who missed the deadline because of something like that happening.
I've seen a few rage posts about we're delivering something.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Right. Sorry, guys.
Please, audience, you can only blame yourself. Yeah, that didn't work out,
I mean, I have to say, even after several months of playing and going through the code and changing everything, there was a surprise. It was also like a new functionality which no one was aware of, or like for example, there's one achievement with I think Lazy Pete where he's sitting on the table edge, and you couldn't reach him in the console version because your movement was limited, right? And you couldn't just freely click anywhere you wanted, but you were limited to the playground. So yeah, we just had to figure out to think about what we want to do with that. But yeah, there was this kind of stuff coming up when we're working through, and we hope we found everything.
I mean, if you found Lazy Pete, I think you got it all, because that's the weirdest one we have when it comes to hidden things.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm sure there were other things in the sort of the way we made the game must have been kind of interesting to dive into from your perspective. Just here's the game, make it work for consoles, because the sort of journey we had we made some major changes along the way. For instance, we had early on in development we had levels and scenarios in our game, which we don't have in the final game. But that's traced in how we built the game and how all the things are set up, which must have just been weird on the other end when you see this game. Why have they scenario settings and stuff? There's just one scenario. What's the point?
Yeah, but I would say you managed quite well to move it over. So
Cool.
you could see it's coming from there, but in the end it was designed quite nice, and it was also a lot of for us to learn. I mean, we haven't been developing our management game ourselves, so it was quite nice to see how you approach certain things and implemented certain solutions, and that was quite nice, and a lot of stuff to learn for us there.
Cool, yeah.
Awesome. Maybe to slowly come to an end, because time flies. It's crazy. We've had a couple of questions in the various chats on Twitch and Facebook. First of all, Sean asked if we're actually live or if we're just playing a replay. Yes, we are live. There you go. That's that answered.
Yes.
Yona asked, does the legendary pause button make a return in the console version?
I mean, is there like another pause button, or is it just
no
pause button in the beginning?
No,
right?
yeah, that's when we.
You can pause the game.
Yeah, I think that's what he was getting to. Yeah. There was this funny bit where we had some going back and forth about the pause button. Some people were opposed to being able to pause the game.
So the first months when the game was released, we didn't have a way to pause it like in game and like plan and such, and that got people furious. So it became like an in-community thing, because we felt like the game was designed so we didn't need a pause button, but we were wrong.
Changed on console because you only could open one window. You need a little bit more time to actually navigate the menus. So it felt just right to pause it automatically here and there, so the player actually got some time, and then I think
Yeah, I mean, it turned into, even on our end, there's a colleague on this end who, whenever he's disagreeing with me, he always throws in, and I still think you're wrong about the pause button. So it's like forever where we disagreed on the pause button.
That's
well, yeah,
funny, though.
It was
a sensitive issue.
Yeah, it was months to add it, and there was support for it. It was just a decision of doing it. So
It's funny. It's funny how it seems.
Yeah, here and there, because we have it in planning mode, for instance, because it's a full screen thing. We didn't want the factory to be running in the background when you were thinking. But for all the small UIs, it made more sense on PC to just keep it running. And time is so slow anyway. But on as you say, on console, it covers the whole screen or most of it. So just auto pause. It makes sense.
For sure. It's funny how such a it feels like such a small detail, and almost borderline irrelevant to the experience, but apparently it isn't, because people are very passionate about this pause button in both directions. That's great, though. That's good to see. Good to see the community getting involved. Obviously, sharing their feedback and what they think would improve the game. And at the end of the day, if there's many people out there playing the game, they will have some good ideas on how to improve it. That during development, none of us thought about, and that's super useful, obviously. So
it's also often is the situation where the community comes with the devices and so on, and we, as developers, we can say, yeah, we even have a design doc for that one. You just didn't make it into a game, or we had to choose which of these things we believed in the most. But it's always nice to interact with the community, and I'm not sure where we're going to get feedback from the console players, but I'm looking forward to hearing how things are working out for them. And I mean, just hanging out with the community is always good, because that's the rawest and best form of feedback we can get. I mean, reviews are cool and all with official stuff, but people getting in touch and telling us things is always it's the best.
Yeah, it's a very direct form of sharing feedback. Yeah.
And just seeing the game being played is super nice, especially on release day. We always like sneaking into like Twitch videos, and nobody noticing that we're actually the developers looking at the video.
Yeah.
Some review also like, hey, we worked on this game.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool.
Especially when you see it from like around the world, you're like, oh, holy shit, it made its way over there. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a strong and passionate community, and it's so cool to see how they like pick apart the game, and they take the time to learn the ins and out of the game in a ways that we don't know. So it's gonna be really exciting to see how the console community will grow and how they will interact with the game long term.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
It's an whole new audience, and they might be like a difference in how they interact.
It's going to be interesting to see if they can abuse some of the new console mechanics to annihilate the current speedrun world record. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see.
Well, you did streamline the game, so
yeah, who knows? Who knows? Right. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your time. Anybody watching, the game is out on consoles right now. Well, on that PS4 and Xbox, that is. Switch will be released next week on October 1st. And yeah, pick it up. It's a lot of fun. What else can I say? There's a lot of hard work and a lot of love that went into this game and into the port as well, obviously. And yeah, I can really recommend it. Having played it, quite a lot myself and still enjoying it to this day. That's unusual, actually. Even, obviously, as I work in testing, I play these games a lot before they even, get released. And then usually by the time they're released, even if it's a great game, you're kind of over it at that point, right? When you've put hundreds of hours into it. That's normal. But yeah, to this day, I come back to Little Big Workshop, and it's just great. It's a great experience.
Seriously, massive cheers to Massive Mini Team.
Yeah.
You guys did an amazing job.
Absolutely.
And honestly, like seeing the game on the PS4 store this morning, it really seriously brought a tear to my eye. It's so incredibly humbling and cool to see the game on these platforms, and you guys made that happen. So super cool. Thank you so much. It was an amazing experience.
100%.
It was great to be involved in this great project.
Cool. And we're gonna get together and play the game this weekend, and it's gonna be so much fun. So
That's cool. That's really
Sounds
nice.
good. Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Sooner or later. We'll see you back here, hopefully.
Cool. Thanks for having us.
Take care. Take care, everybody.